Hello, everyone, and we're doing this now. We're doing not the first ever, but the second ever Chess 24 Simul. It's going to be a chill Simul so far. Well, not so far. We will have 8 boards only. So with the 30 plus 30 time control, this should allow me to actually pay decent attention to chat and just talk to you guys about anything and everything. Hopefully, because that is ample time normally for an 8 board simul. And uh, with that in mind, let's get this show on the road. As usual, it's no, I think it's split equally for black games and for white games, and uh, you can't join this simul Filipino. There was I think some bidding done prior to the event, and these are the people who were selected. It's not an open format. It's the the selection has been closed. So let's see. While I talk to you guys, because I honestly feel like we should probably have enough time here. I will take like 30 seconds for opening requests. Obviously, it very much depends on my opponents complying with your wishes, but I will take actual opening requests here. So I'll wait even with the first move on this board to see what you guys want to see, uh, and then and then we'll proceed. Grunfeld, please. That's not a very uh, that's not a very left field suggestion. E4, e5, queen h5. I am allowed to veto some of your suggestions, though. Caro, with which color, Stefanel? Berlin, we have established. I've placed myself under a gash not to play the Berlin, so there's not going to be any Berlins. I see 2 Caracans. Which color? You do have to specify. With white, yeah, that very much depends on whether people decide to comply with this. Smithmore, yeah, okay, I guess in view of recent events, but I'm not that happy about that one. Uh, so okay, I think we can sort of conclude that uh, the people want me to play 1e4 and then go from there. And with black, how about one King's Indian attack as white? I think I'm running out of white games, but yeah, no bone clouds are going to be. There shall be no bone clouds in this simul. Knight to a3 somewhere. I will endeavor to put a knight on a3 in one of the games, but I can't promise it will be on move 2. One King's Indian attack was requested. Uh, let's see if we can get there. that's a decent suggestion, Carnicero. I can try and arrange that actually. And we still have some requests from the white side. So, okay. I did promise this will at some point become illegal in my stream, but we are not in my stream right now. So I cannot really complain. It is still legal to play the London against me. Enjoy it while you can. Uh, what shall I play against? This is such a struggle for me every single time. It's just bizarre how much I struggle with this decision. Uh, this game appears not to have started yet. There is a Sicilian here. People have asked for a Smith Mora, so I will play a Smith Mora. Bishop b5 check will play knight d7. Knight f3 c5 kind of cuts down severely on my ability to play the King's Indian attack, but I will continue trying for at least a little bit longer. And the bishop b5 g5 has been thwarted, regrettably. Yeah, people don't realize that for me to play the Caro, they need to kind of cut down on this activity and push the C pawn slightly more in a slightly more restrained fashion. I've played a couple of attempted to play a couple. Okay, we have one more board to try the bishop b5 g5 line, right? So let's do that. Yeah, the London is in full swing here. Shilm is still not here. At least his clock is not ticking, which is good because we don't want to steal his time. But let's hope he appears. Yeah, the Smith Mora is now in progress. Dutch against the London, you have to take the decision kind of earlier than your opponent commits to bishop c4, bishop f4. And I mean, Dutch in general, if anybody said Dutch, I would have played the Dutch, but there were actually requests for the Grunfeld and no requests for the Dutch. So I was sort of trying to play the Grunfeld as a polite man who had requests. Bishop a4. This is a very, very topical line. Probably the most topical line of bishop b5 check knight d7 right now. And the point here, of course, is that white does not have to defend the pawn on e4 right now. He can castle. G3, G6, this is fine. And here I will not play the Sveshnikov because I don't know anything about the Sveshnikov. I will play something else. Let's say I will play the Rouser. I used to play a lot of the Rouser in, about 25 years ago. So I obviously my theoretical knowledge here will be a bit outdated. No bishop b5, g5s for us anywhere, unfortunately. Yeah. London is being very Londony. There is still nothing going on this board, which is a little bit sad. And yeah, we have a Smith Mora in progress. Yeah, castles, if you take on e4 here, can I actually draw arrows? Appears I cannot draw arrows on my own boards, which is actually maybe for the best considering how horrible my arrow work normally is. White goes rook e1 and then goes d4, and there's really a lot of compensation there for the sacrificed material. And the biggest point of bishop a4 is if we play a6 here, apart from the usual types of positions where white goes c3, has the option of playing c4, which is clearly an achievement for white in these types of structures. I'll go with g6, bishop g7. It's not, will I? It's probably not the best approach, but it's not the worst either. G6. The reason that kind of I'm worried about this is he can go rook e1, bishop g7, c3 here, and then play d4, and I end up in a kind of a position I sort of dislike here with black. So maybe something else is more advisable. The bishop on a4 is not annoying. It's just an attempt to kind of find wiggle room where none existed previously. Like the old theory of the bishop b5 knight d7 check, bishop b5 check knight d7 has sort of been exhausted in most of the more popular lines, and this one is relatively fresh. It's not, you know, groundbreaking or anything, but it's relatively fresh compared to what used to go on in these types of positions. I should finally settle on a move here. I'm taking a bit too long. Not because I'm worried about this position, but because simply, we should be moving the action. We should be moving the action along a little bit. Yeah, we're still sort of on course for some kind of a King's Indian attack, even though with the bishop on g7, it's less exciting. F3 against an attempted Richter Rouser is a very serious move. Definitely one of the more principled replies here. I think the more interesting way to play here is to play e6 and to allow very sharp tactical positions there. So I'll go with that. Are you watching England versus Pakistan? I was until this started. It was actually open on my screen. Um, let's switch to some kind of a pulse in here. Uh, yeah, I've. This is not horribly exciting so far, but such is life. This game still refuses to start. It's alarming, but not that alarming, I guess. Yeah, C3 immediately. I'm wondering about that, honestly, because I have a feeling like if my opponent continues taunting me like this, I have a feeling eventually I can start taking on E4. And here, with the inclusion of A6 and C3, I'm really wondering if I can't just take on E4 here. I suspect I can. And I think we are probably going to put that to the test. Um, I mean, it's risky, but I have a feeling I should be able to do this now. Knight c6. I mean, it's probably the wisest course here to play c4. Honestly, the King's Indian attack against the positions with the bishop on e7, I'm happier to play this with white than I am to uh, in other case. I think I might actually play c4 here and switch. Because those positions kind of annoy me with every color, so this is a little bit more exciting. Yeah, this is going to be hopefully going to be an exciting game. And here we have a rouser with colors reversed, which is fun. Still not starting. A6. I don't know if A6 is particularly great in this particular case, but yeah, I'm just going to continue developing normally, and I will kind of start thinking about whether this is good or not when we have slightly more data. Yeah, rook e1, I thought I can just go back. It will be kind of cool if I'm just completely lost here for some reason, but I really don't think I am. I think the fact that I can play b5 here matters a great deal compared to the same position with pawn on c2 and pawn on a7. So only 6 opponents you should be able to watch cricket at the same time. First of all, it's 7, and secondly, that would be impolite. I'm pretty sure. Yeah, but here I now realize my mistake, because you are supposed to play d4 faster than I will be able to play d4 in this position. So I'm going to have absolutely nothing out of the opening here, which is fine, but I sort of realize my mistake. Yeah, this is sort of a very typical thing I get against the London. I normally end up playing, like I have numerous games against Gatakamsky, for instance, from this setup where I play d6, b6, bishop b7, knight bd7, and then just shuffle the pieces forever. With a pawn not on a6, e4, e5 is obviously quite strong in this position, but I think with a pawn on a6, this should be fine for black, I assume. We can still play something like bishop f4 and hang on, bishop f4, he might actually play g6 and maybe e5 actually becomes weaker. Although queen b3 might be interesting there. Yeah, this is my issue with the Smith-Morra. I really should kind of have a better clue on what I'm doing here with white. I have never studied this opening with either color. And I have only kind of a fleeting idea of what I'm supposed to be aiming for. Which one is the FIDE women's FIDE master? I think there's a women's grandmaster in this Simul. And it's, I think, this board. Yeah, this board. In this position, there's a choice for black between playing d6, d5, and playing a6 and playing slower. D5 is probably stronger, but it's also kind of slightly more boring, I would say. So let's go for the more adventurous type of position. Here we castle. Here there's still a waiting time. Queen c2. Queen c2 is... I wonder if my opponent actually intends to castle queenside here, which would be a lot of fun. I don't know if it's great in this particular setup, but it would definitely liven up liven up the position wonderfully. Um, uh, Nothing happening here, nothing happening here, and here. Yeah, normally you have the same position with black having a knight on g8 and white not having castled yet, and then d4, cd4, knight b5 is actually quite sensible. It probably isn't very good here. I'm pretty sure it doesn't really make much sense at all here. So I'll go with a kind of a scuffed version of what Ding Liren has been playing against this setup for a while. This shouldn't really work here necessarily. It's kind of slow, and I think white is supposed to have achieved kind of more before he goes for these things, but it's still not entirely pointless, I assume. With the intention of playing bishop a3 and then queen c1 and playing for those types of positions. I'm not sure it actually works here, but I'm going to try. Yeah, g4, here we go. I think takes, and then b5. Move orders are kind of tricky in that position, but I think that's probably correct. Somehow, yeah, finally there's a move here. He does castle long. It's yeah, we definitely welcome these developments, even though I'm actually kind of worried about h4, h5 here. We could just get blasted out of the water here by our opponent, which would be both great and not so great. I think I'm supposed to play c5, then he goes h4, and then we have a question, because I have to kind of react to h5, and exactly how I'm supposed to react to h5 there is rather unclear. But c5 needs to be played regardless. So after e6 here, I think my plans become a lot simpler. We go queen e2, we go rook fd1, and then we start kind of asking questions about the pawn on d6. I suspect this is the way to go here. Yeah, after bishop c2, my knight on d7 is no longer pinned, and there is no immediate threat to my position. So I think I might even have enough time to play g6, bishop g7. Let me consider this for a second. Um, uh, Obviously, e6, bishop e7 is maybe slightly safer, but e6, I do have to calculate things like knight g5 with the intention of knight takes e6 or rook takes e6, and g6 doesn't give white that particular opening to create problems for me. I think I will try playing g6 here. It feels safe enough to me. I don't know. Maybe I'm missing something spectacular, but I don't see it. Here my opponent is thinking. Here we go. I mean, I can start with knight d7, but it normally just gets to the same position anyway. Doesn't really matter. f3, bishop e7. I think I'm supposed to play h4 here. Bishop e2, bishop e2. I think knight f6 is the normal way to play, but I've been trying to make the lines with the b7, b5 here work for a while. So h3 is wrong. If you play queen c2 and castle long, you really are supposed to play h4, h5. I'm pretty sure. b5, I think I'm quite happy about b5 because my bishop kind of needs to sidestep away from the c file anyway. And the fact that my opponent is forcing me to make a move which I probably would have made anyway is, well, obviously an advantage for me, not a disadvantage. Still thinking. Here, queen a5 remains. Like, you kind of have to play queen a5, I think, because if you play b6 or d6 or something like that, I think it kind of justifies my previous play a little bit more than is necessary for black here. Still thinking here. Here we go back to e3. a3 is definitely a reasonable move, but Not a move I'm very scared of. Um, Rook a7. This is clever. I'm actually quite impressed by this. I have a feeling once again that perhaps I am underestimating the knowledge of the Smith Mora that the general population has, and I don't. The plan, of course, here is to play Rook d7 when I play Rook d1 and develop the bishop to b7, which I think should prompt me to maybe start with Rook c1 instead. Um, there's also definitely some point to at least trying to calculate a4, because I think after Rook c1, I mean, the only move that worries me after Rook c1, honestly, is the move Knight a5. But I have a feeling I should be able to develop quite a lot of play there anyway. So I'm just going to go with it. A4 is very logical here, but I'm really not very unhappy about having to play bishop b7. And then he takes on c5. Maybe I should play rook b8. Rook b8 is a kind of a sad move because you normally obviously don't want to give up the control over the a file. Uh, um, yeah, that's very, very useful advice, CPK. Incredibly useful advice. I did not know how the simuls worked, but now I know. You should have warned me in advance. I'm completely unprepared for this, it turns out. So it's a choice between rook b8 and bishop b7. Bishop f4 actually is going to be quite annoying. Maybe as I suspected, maybe I've underestimated how dangerous this position is. Yeah, queen a5 finally played. I think in order to justify what I was doing, I'm supposed to play queen c1 here, even though I'm not entirely sure what I'm trying to achieve. King b1, I think we always play bishop b7 in those types of positions. Julia is playing a very decent game of like old style rouser. I've had games like this in like the mid 90s with the white pieces. So this is a very nice blast from the past. Here I'm actually doing very, very well because I have the knight d5, knight b4 tactic coming up, which will pick up the bishop on d3. Rook d7 immediately. Interesting, because I thought I will play knight takes b5 here, but maybe my opponent for some reason just isn't worried about that. He takes, I guess, and goes bishop b7. But that position really doesn't look great for him. I'm just going to go with it. I don't think I need to over calculate here. Um, I think in one game against Ruslan Sherbakov around 1997, I actually played knight takes e6 in this particular position instead of bishop g5. But I think putting it back on g5 before committing to anything on the queen side is not a mistake at the very least. Still thinking here. Still thinking here. I could have started with knight d5 as well, but I think this is fine. Yeah, bishop f4 is what I missed. Specifically, this move is very much something that I have. It fell out of my field of vision basically when I was considering choosing between e6 and g6, and I am now very much regretting my life's choices because it's going to be a problem. I suspect I will end up having to play e6 now, and if I'm playing e6 now, I most assuredly was supposed to play e6 then. That was a really stupid decision, but I don't really see. I mean, I could try queen b6. I'm really skating on very, very thin ice right now on this board, but maybe I should actually try that. d6, yeah, we're supposed, I think, to play for some kind of e3, d4 plan here. It's a bit optimistic, but that's the dream. A3, we go knight d7. This move ends up being made in most cases anyway. But yeah, so far this game is like this is the height of theory in the maybe early 20th, early this millennia. F4 is an interesting choice here. Not the one I would have gone with, but an interesting choice nonetheless. I'm wondering if I can somehow exploit it immediately with like B5, B5, B4. Um, uh, we could also just play. I mean, E5 is sort of a threat already. B4 would be an interesting option here. But he takes, and goes bishop f3. And maybe we can go knight a5 there. Let's see what happens. It's an interesting move at least. Yeah, here we do this, obviously. This one hasn't started yet. And here I was very much hoping I can make queen takes b5 work. It feels to me like there is a very high likelihood that it does work. So I'm just going to proceed under that assumption that we can play this. Um, yeah, this one I might just lose in 20 moves, honestly. G6 was just a very, very big mistake. H4. Yeah, Sonia is playing a very, very good game of chess so far. Clearly knows her theory of this line and hasn't put a foot wrong yet. And I probably should have chosen something else. I'm not particularly happy with my opening choice in this game. We should get some kind of a6 and b5. Like the only reason I'm not, yeah, knight takes e4 is kind of important here, but I was hoping I can just make some tactics work here. Bishop b6 knight, I mean, sorry, rook b6 knight c5 is the reason this position isn't immediately winning for me, but maybe it still is, honestly. It looks very, very promising. Still thinking here, bishop d7 here. I don't think I can play d4 yet, so I will continue preparing it for one more move. How much of my preparation comes from books? These days, not very much. These days, books aren't very much, part of your intake. When I was a kid, most of it came from books, I would say. Um, yeah, here I want to play d4. I want to return to this position and talk about it for a second because, yeah, basically I'm hoping to be able to play bishop g7 and long castle and short castles, but it's very, very unclear if I will be able to. And generally speaking, I am only one pawn up here. And I am sort of severely underdeveloped, and my king is still in the center. So I still think probably the inclusion of a6 and c3 gives me enough justification to play what I played, but I'm beginning to suspect that maybe I was wrong. Here, yeah, we need to kind of the knight on c3 doesn't do very much, so we need to start preparing for some kind of a rerouting of my pieces. Yeah, bishop f3. I was planning to sort of continue teasing my opponent with weirdly placed pieces with the idea of knight a5, knight c4. What about the notes for my Spanish d3 course? Knight b1 is a strange move here, which kind of allows me specifically to play the move I very much wanted to play because now the bishop on f3 is hanging. Yeah, knight c5, and here I thought I can just play rook c1 and create a very, very strong threat of rook takes c5, which is, I think, very difficult for my opponent to meet. I think the notes exist, right? Yeah, I'm pretty sure that for that particular series, the PGNs exist. It's the Arkhangelsk, which is still PGN-less. Now that he hasn't taken on b5 and done a8, I'm very tempted to play rook d8 here because I think having some control over the d file might be very, very useful in the days to come. I think bishop g7, bishop d6 is a little bit too meh. Uh, but we have downgraded our expectations for this game from just being a pawn up out of the opening to let's hope we're not completely lost. I think by this point I can probably play d4. Although he takes, goes knight f5. Maybe it's not as happy as all that. Yeah, it's still kind of awkward for me, despite I think my opponent could have played kind of more actively here, but even the reasonably contained way my opponent has treated this position is still quite fine. Maybe I should just go bishop b2 and kind of switch the plans up a little bit. Queen e3 is fine. Yeah, I'm not going to enjoy this game very much. I have a feeling this is now a very serious problem, because I would very much like to play my opponent's position here, and that's never really a recipe for happiness. Queen d3. Yeah, I was hoping I can go knight c4, and if he goes bishop c1, then we will consider our options again. Yeah, a3 is fine, but we can even go a5 and then b4. This is, to all intents and purposes, this is probably just a winning position for me now. Queen e2 is correct, I felt, but I also felt I can now play this move and not be entirely unhappy about life, because I have established some sort of control over most of my weaknesses here. Shouldn't be getting mated anytime soon, at least in my view. I don't know, maybe I'm missing something. Yeah, I think there were some games where even Gary Kasparov, who is a better Sicilian player than I am, has suffered quite a bit in those types of positions in his career. AB5, I think we're supposed to go AB5, and I mean the pawn on B5 is probably falling here. I have, you know, I'm expecting to not have the pawn on B5 in, like, let's say 5 moves time, but even if while it's happening, I'm in time to somehow get my king to safety, I think I should be reasonably okay with how things are going. F4 is definitely not a mistake, but maybe not something I would have played here. It's fine though. It's as I said, like I'm not going to criticize this move. It's a very natural move in this position. I think I need to start creating some issues for my opponent here by, at least hoping to get some files open on the queen side as well. This is a very, very dangerous position for black, though. She goes bishop b6. I go queen b8. She goes either h5 or f5, and yeah, it's very, very easy to get just mated on the king side in these types of positions. But I've made my bet, so I'm going to lay in it. Yeah, this is also not great. So in the two games against female players so far, I think those are the two games that worry me the most. At least until this moment. I'll play queen f2 because I want to keep the queens on the board here, and queen c5 was bugging me a little bit. Queen a8, yeah, there should be a tactical solution now, and I think I see one. I think this is just winning. Rook c5 followed by knight e5, and I think we kind of crash through here and give mate. Rook a5, yeah, rook a5 is definitely a move that exists, but at least, at the very least, I can take on f3 right now and either divert, and I think this is what I will do. I don't see a refutation to bishop c6, but I think bishop takes f3 just in general suits my game plan better. Yeah, h5 is fine. Uh, I think it was possible to prefer f5, but h5 is completely fine. And yeah, my point was I was hoping that this somehow distracts my opponent from giving mate and gives me some counterplay on the queen side. I don't know exactly what kind of counterplay, but some kind of counterplay. Uh, Rook c8 here is played obviously with the intention of, at least pretending I'm threatening knight takes b2. I don't know if I'm actually threatening knight takes b2 though. Yeah, dc 95. I just don't see how this can not be winning. Queen takes f3. I can even consider going c takes b4. It's a little bit ambitious, but it does drive the rook away from good squares and gives me additional squares for the bishop. I think probably I can afford to be a little bit greedy here. Yeah, b5 we want to play like king b1, knight e2, and then the game begins. Yeah, here we can win material. This one sadly just seemingly did not start. I think we can probably, just so that I have fewer clicks to make, I think we can probably uh, stop this game and just close the window. I don't think it's going to restart. Mm-hmm. Yeah, 95. I'm pretty sure I'm completely winning here. I'm a lot less sure about the evaluation of this position, but I'm happier now than I was, like, let's say, 2 minutes ago. Yeah, this one is developing slowly. Here, my opponent is pausing because I do have some ideas here. I have, for instance, some positions in which rook takes c3, followed by some kind of bishop takes c4 might become playable. Maybe not immediately right now, but it might become something that I might be interested in. If she goes g6, which I think is sort of the normal procedure here, although I'm starting to think I might just be completely busted after h6 now, as I now realize. Maybe I just resign if she plays h6 here, which would be unfortunate. Wasn't my intention, honestly, to just resign by move 20. Yeah, h6, and I cannot play g6 because queen d4 wins a piece on b4. Yeah, this is just a complete crush. I should have chosen a different opening. Like, I honestly think my biggest mistake in this game was choosing this opening. And I just got completely rolled over by somebody who knew what she was doing a lot better than I did. I think I just get mated if she plays h6, which is quite remarkable, honestly, and well played by my opponent. Castles, I mean, I can take this, but then in the end of that line, she goes, or he goes rook fb1, and the bishop on b7 is hanging, and it's kind of awkward. So I don't know if I'm very happy about that. I need to figure out if e4, e5 is a threat here. I think I can probably ignore it for one move. Can I? I mean, I could play d7, d6, but d7, d6 is just such a non Paulson move that I don't want to make it. Playing e5 and engaging in some kind of a rope-a-dope is much more in tune with how the opening is normally played. Bishop b2. I mean, I don't even have to take immediately. We can continue playing, improving moves for now. We're winning here. Rook a8 is probably correct, but I think I'm only one move away here from finally getting my king to safety. So I will. Hang on a second, though. If I play bishop g7, the rook on d8 gets taken. If I take with the queen, there is bishop d6, which is a bit annoying. Maybe I'm supposed to play bishop c5 here. I don't know. Feels very meh to deviate from what I was intending to do there anyway. Maybe bishop e7 is fine. Bishop h6 exists, so this will be slightly annoying, but probably not greatly so. Although I don't know why I say that. It will be quite annoying. Maybe we go bishop g7 and we take with the king, and then we put it on a7 and we pretend this is what was being planned all along. It's a very risky strategy. Let's see what's happening on the other boards. Still no move here. I'm quite happy to go knight e2 here. King h1. I think I am now supposed to take on b2. I don't think there's any more reasons for me not to do this. 92. Okay, I will take the rook. You know, if my opponent forces me to take the rook, I will take the rook. Still thinking here. Yeah, this is the decision that is going to be the biggest problem. This is a decision I need to actually spend some time on and come to a conclusion somehow. Maybe bishop e7, bishop takes d8. Makes some sense. I still don't have a good reply to bishop h6, but honestly, bishop h6 is like it's a nuisance, but it's not a major nuisance for me. I think it's manageable. Still thinking here. Still thinking here. I think I'm just a pawn up here, as far as I can tell. I don't really see anything that should be a problem for me. Completely winning here. Okay, d5. d5 has actually been played on this board. I failed to notice that. My intention was to play knight a4 here. It's probably not great, but it's sort of the way I was planning to reply. Or maybe cd5, ed5, knight a4. Actually, maybe this is slightly more topical. I think somebody resigned, and it wasn't me. Okay, I'm also resigning here, but I think somebody resigned on the other boards. Yeah, it's remarkable how quickly this went downhill for me. The problem is, like, normally if you allow h takes g7, it's not the end of the world, but here it is, because if I do allow it and just move my rook away, queen h3 on the next move will be made. So I just legitimately don't know how to continue this game without resigning. People are surprised that I'm considering resigning here, but really it's not too early. It would not be a premature resignation here if I did do that. I appear to just be getting mated. Otherwise, I just don't see how I'm not getting mated. Like, I can play f6. The one move I so far spotted, which maybe allows me to prolong the game for 3 moves, is f6. But yeah, +5 here doesn't surprise me at all. I think we just give the opponent the respect she deserves here and not continue, because honestly, like, if f6 is my only move here, after bishop h3, my desire to resign will just be much stronger. Or hg followed by queen h3. I mean, any of those moves. Yeah, I think this is just a poorly played game by me and a very well played game by my opponent. So congrats to her. And let me close this window so we don't have to return to it anymore. We are a pawn up here. Knight db1. We can continue taking material. Yeah, well played, Josephine. Instructive game. I'm just sort of, my only regret in that game is that I did not give my opponent, more of a game, because much of it was just theory, and then I couldn't remember how I'm supposed to deal with this. Apart from the fact that I could have played d5 on move 9 and kind of didn't do it by design, which, looking back, is an incredibly stupid idea. I should have made the move which I thought was the best move in the position and gone from there. Yeah, my opponent just resigned here, and I don't think it's too premature either. Here I was planning to take with the bishop, I think. Just preparing to castle, if I get allowed to castle. And here we go knight a4. We attack the pawn on attack the pawn on c5, and at the very least, I should be able to trade the dark squared bishops off, which is something that obviously would be to my advantage, because without the dark square bishop, the the kingside situation for my opponent will become slightly less safe. Quite a long wait here for my opponent, who I guess is pondering whether she wants to go bishop b5 or not, which is a perfectly sensible move, but there are other options other options available as well. We are a pawn up here for now. Here, I mean, most moves win. It's I would guess like most moves that don't blunder a piece here are completely winning. I'm just trying to find the cleanest way to finish it off. I guess I shouldn't just be very like this. Actually, is stronger than I originally assumed. This is just endgame. Yeah, bishop h6 I think is correct, but I was planning to make this move, and I thought it was going to be quite annoying for my opponent because I am sort of protecting the pawn on b4. I am also pinning the pawn on c3, which means that c takes b4 becomes impossible. And I'm also sort of hinting I want to play queen h5, which gives me a very useful bailout option if I suddenly start disliking my position. Seems like, yeah, and here queen a2 check wins, I think wins more material. I think in most cases I either win the rook on h1 or give mate. Like here I win the rook on h1. Not my move anywhere else, I think. My move somewhere. So yeah, one game, yeah, and here we get a resignation. We're down to 4 boards. I won 3 games already, lost one. Got completely outplayed by my opponent in that one game. And yeah, here I think it is time for me to actually go for the bailout option I mentioned, because I don't quite like how my king is stuck in the center, and I think it might become a very large issue if I continue pretending it's not threatening. So I will go with queen h5. I don't think there is any tactics that I'm missing. It's not going to be easy to win this position, but I think it's a decent decision from a practical standpoint. E5 with a knight on e2 is actually, once again, betraying very, very good pedigree by my opponent here. It's something that rouser players quite like to do, and it's very, very valid as a strategy here. I'm wondering about playing c2, c4 here to kind of put something in the way of your typical black counterplay, which would be bishop b6 and then maybe d6, d5. And also it makes the threats of a5, a4, a3 a bit slower. And this is sort of the advantage for black for having played h6, h5 early in the game, because normally my g pawn would already be somewhere on the g5 square, and that would be arguably a very serious problem for my opponent. But here, because she played h6, h5, it's very difficult for me to develop any kind of a kingside storm, because it's very difficult to push g4. I'm also sort of curious about the move c3 with the intention of, if she goes a5, of taking and going rook c1. Maybe that's actually stronger. It's a bit non-standard, but I think maybe we could actually switch to playing on the queen side here instead of playing on the king side. I don't know. It's definitely an interesting option. I don't know if it's good or not. My biggest issue here is just finding a plan of something to do. And c3 definitely does give me something to do. It might not be, something that is particularly good, though, which is unnerving. But otherwise, like, it's very easy for black to play. Black goes a5, bishop b6, a4. I cannot really push g4. I cannot really push f4 because it gives up the square on g4, which is a very attractive square for the black pieces. So it's either c3 or c4 here, I'm pretty sure. And I mean, c3 is slightly more interesting, so let's go c3. Rook fb1 instantly is a move I will admit I completely missed. I somehow assumed that white has to either play e5 or take the queen on c3 somehow. Neither of those things are any good. This move I did not expect. And it's a good move. It's a good move. I can probably still hang on to the material here if I go takes rook c7 though. At least for the time being, I can still pretend I'm a pawn up and force my opponent to kind of fight for the recapture of the pawn. So I think that's probably best play. Yeah, here the point I was making earlier is that yeah, queen f4 is an attempt to continue playing for mate, which I very much respect, even though I did not think when I was considering my options, I did not think this was particularly good, and I still don't really think it's particularly good. But it definitely deserves respect as a continuation of a very kind of a consistent game plan here by my opponent, trying not to allow me to castle, trying to prevent me from finishing development. But I think knight c5 is very strong. I think this is sort of the biggest issue about this is that knight c5 is a very strong reply. I did miss bishop g7 though when I was thinking about this. I kind of calculated up to the fact that I have that I have knight c5, and I missed the fact that there is bishop g7. But I think the tactics work out in my favor. So I'm going to go with it. But yeah, this is still a position which I can very easily see myself losing if I miss a tactic somewhere. And I have been already shown to be, extremely capable of missing a tactic. But the point of knight c5 is like we're attacking the bishop on b3, we're creating a threat of knight d3. We're also protecting the pawn on e6 additionally, which is very useful for us because bishop takes e6 is something I've been worrying about for a while. But yeah, like it's very, very possible that I'm missing something simple here and I get mated. But I don't see it, and I don't really feel like I should be dwelling on it. If it exists, it exists. Still thinking here, still thinking here, still thinking here. Something happened somewhere. I think the more ambitious way to recapture here is to recapture with the queen. You kind of won the queen on the long diagonal, so I'll go with that. There's been a move somewhere else, I think, or maybe not. Yeah, bishop g7, and yeah, this is where once again I am very scared, but I don't see any mate, so I'm just going to go with my calculation. And it also maybe gives me, like, once again, it will be very, very embarrassing if I'm wrong about this. But I think this could result in a very curious position where I have a feeling my opponent thinks he is doing very well because he does not really realize that there is a move in the position which is legal. I'll wait until this position shows up on the board, if it does show up on the board, and then we can discuss it. But I have a feeling we are now having this kind of a weird internal discussion with my opponent where he is planning to play queen b8, and he thinks he's doing well there. And I'm pretty sure he's not doing well, but he is not doing well for a very, very specific reason, which is going to be quite curious. Moves somewhere else. Yeah, d4 is very, very principled here. I like how my opponent is playing. D4 is definitely, potentially a reason for me to not have taken on b2 with the queen. But for now, I will just play rook ac1, and even when my opponent plays b6, I will start calculating what happens there. There's also all kinds of queen d6 lines and so on, but after queen d6, knight takes e1, I don't think he has enough pieces in the attack for me to be much worried. It looks kind of scary because there's all kinds of bishop takes e6 tactics happening, but even bishop takes e6 there doesn't actually generate a threat of mate. B6 played. Yeah, I think I have to take e takes d4 here and kind of pass the mantle of calculation to my opponent and ask him to show me why he feels this is not just a pawn. I don't quite see it honestly so far. I think it's possible to take, and I think best case scenario, black gets some kind of an endgame which is maybe defensible, but no, it's not great anyway. Yeah, a5 I think was the principal move, and now my intention was to start swapping down along the c file and hoping to establish control. Maybe there is no control to establish here. I'm very open to the idea that I'm worse here, but at least it's not going to be boring. H3 is, despite being a very quiet move, I kind of like this approach because I am a pawn up here, but it's really not that easy for me to kind of improve. So it makes perfect sense for my opponent to make kind of quiet improving moves and waiting for me to declare my hand, so to speak. I think I'll start by playing rook a8. I don't think I'm blundering anything, and I think additionally securing the pawn on a6 is useful. Still thinking here. Yeah, this is the critical position. Knight d4, knight d4, queen takes d4. I don't really see anything particularly wrong with it, apart from the fact that bishop takes a4 might result in an endgame which is not that horrible for black, which will be regrettable, honestly. Like, I would like to be more winning, so to speak, rather than maybe not winning at all. But I also feel like there might not be much other choice for me in this position, because we cannot really allow, afford to let this pawn survive. It's a little bit too important. Once again, maybe I'm missing something simple, but I don't think I am. Handle of calculation will be in my future D&D games from now on. I would be honored if you did that, J Wolf. That would be a genuine honor for me. Yeah, bishop takes c8 is very logical, and yeah, my reasoning was I can put the bishop on c4 here and start fighting for the good squares in the center. But honestly, even I myself am not entirely convinced by any of this. Knight b3 is very, very logical. I like this move. I was actually kind of worried about it even before. And as a matter of fact, I think it's very possible to argue that rook a8 made it stronger. Because now after knight a5, bishop c8, the long diagonal is actually more weakened than it was before. But we can kind of unhappily play d7, d5 as a bailout option here if we have to. It will be unhappily, but it probably needs to be done. Still thinking here. Yeah, we have to take. Still thinking here. Still thinking here. So not much is going on so far on any of the boards. So we can perhaps discuss something. Yeah, I am reading not all the chats. I'm limiting myself to the Chess24 chat and the Twitch chat, but I am reading the Twitch chat as well. And hello, Silver Dragons. Something happened somewhere. Yeah, bishop takes a4 is the correct approach here. I've kind of idly wondered if I can play something fanciful here, like queen e3 or queen e4, but I don't think it works. It's a little bit too FPSy. Maybe queen f6. No, I can't make any of those things work. I have to play this endgame, regrettably. And as I mentioned, this endgame really isn't all that much for me. I'm slightly better, but yeah, it's a very, very slight advantage, if anything at all. Bishop e6 is correct. I quite like this from my opponent. I think there is, like, tolerating this bishop on c4 for very long would have been a mistake. And now I think my queen needs to be somewhere on the b3 square to put some pressure on the black center. There was a move somewhere. Rook takes e6. Yeah, I was wondering about that, but I couldn't make it work. So I'm very curious how my opponent is planning to justify it. I don't think it is justifiable, honestly. I think it ends up, although maybe I now realize my mistake. I think queen e3 here might be, or queen d6. No, I don't know which one is stronger. I thought I had a good solution to that, but my solution is actually just a pawn up endgame, which is less than I would have preferred. Yeah, rook ac8. And yeah, this is my issue here, is that, let's say if my bishop was already on b3, I would be somewhat happy about this. But it's not. Well played, Sonia, and yeah, I really wish I could have given you a better game. You just played miles better than I did there. Huh. So I've been kind of racking my brains on the topic of how I can, even continue playing for a win here. And my original intention was to play bishop b4 in this position, and then I realized rook d4 is just very, very strong. But it probably still remains the best shot I have. It's not very much. I realize that, but it's still probably the best move I have in the position. King f7 is probably correct. Now we go, I guess, rook c1 first to get the rook on a good file. Here, there's definitely an argument for going knight e8, surprisingly, because if I go knight d7 and my opponent goes knight a5, I don't think I can go bishop c6. Maybe I can. Hang on a second. If I can go bishop c6 even then, I should definitely be putting my knight on d7, because d7 is just a better square. I think I can. Then we don't have to worry. Yeah, queen d6. I think I've realized why this doesn't work now, because I think I can play queen f5, and I have my own mating threats, which will be quite difficult for my opponent to parry. He probably takes on e6 with the bishop. But yeah, there has to be just rook f8 wins there. I second what Fielding asked. What's the super secret move you had that your opponent didn't see? Yeah, the thing is, I don't think I can touch the pieces, but we can discuss it. In this position, I hope you can see the position on my board right now. White can play queen b8. Then I take the rook on e1. And white takes my knight on f6. I hope you can visualize what happens there. And seemingly, I have no checks. And my bishop on d8 is hanging with mate. And my rook on h8 is also hanging. And then when I got to this position, I realized castling is actually legal in that position, because only the king cannot pass the square that is attacked. The rook, if the rook on h8 is attacked, the castling is still legal. And by castling in that position, I more or less win on the spot, because my king gets out of danger completely, and he can still take the bishop on d8, but now with the bishop, not the queen. And then I start my own mating attack on the king side, and I'm pretty sure I win there. Yeah, this is I overestimated this because I thought after rook c7 it's kind of awkward for my opponent, but it probably just isn't. Depending on what my opponent plays here, I suspect it's just a draw now, quote unquote, objectively. Rook c8. This kind of makes me wonder because I don't know if this endgame is as equal as my opponent seems to be convinced it is. The pawn on b4 is actually quite weak. Yeah, and here I am very, very incentivized to play bishop c6 because the bishop wants to be on b5 or it wants to be traded for that knight on a5 because that is a very nice blockading knight. And I think I can play bishop c6 because if he pins me on c1, I think I can very adequately protect myself with rook a c8. So I'm going to play it. Yeah, and here we have this position where, yeah, I think he is just busted because queen takes f2 is a mating threat. Queen c6, king f7 does absolutely nothing. And I think the only way for him to continue is to trade queens on e6 now with check. And then my rook on h8 is actually kind of captured, but I can sell it for a full piece, and I end up being a piece up. Yeah, king f8 is what I missed. I somehow just assumed that the knight has to go somewhere, and then it's actually a little bit awkward for black. But after king f8, it really isn't. I will continue pretending I'm playing for a win though with this move. Once again, if I get it to be 3, maybe it's not entirely equal, and I can still put some pressure on my opponent. Yeah, this is. I think the simplest way is just to play rook f8 here, and we end up just a full piece up for not very much. Yeah, that's actually kind of clever by my opponent because if I take on before he has knight c3 and uh, those positions are, but I can start by taking the pawn on f2 basically. 3 against 2 on one side with this material left on the board. I assume is still winning, but it takes some work. 2 against 2 on the other hand is really not difficult at all. And the resignation does come. So we are down to 3 boards. If we talk about this endgame in a little bit more detail, bishop against knight with my rook arguably more active than my opponent's rook, and my bishop on b3 being on a square where it's well protected, also putting additional pressure on the f7 pawn, which probably makes it very difficult for my opponent to move the knight away from the e7 square. Even let's say if we imagine in this position my opponent playing a5, I play bishop b3, and my opponent goes rook d6, I play rook b7. It should be a draw, but it's not a draw that black enjoys making, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, I don't know if it's possible. Like the way to the reason I almost didn't play in bishop c2 was I kind of missed knight d5 existed in this position. But I can still give a check from c8 and play bishop b3 next move. And that position is also not that easy for black to immediately equalize. There was a sound of a move somewhere. Knight g8 is a smart choice by my opponent here, but I think one of the pawns should still fall. Maybe not. Huh. That is a very, very smart move by my opponent here. I missed it completely. And bishop takes c7 is actually probably very stupid, allowing her to bring the knight all the way to c6 very easily. Yeah, that was a very, very bad knee-jerk reaction by myself. Uh, yeah, very, very stupid choice. Not happy about it at all. I'm not sure if I was better, but yeah, I should have insisted that we make this trade on my terms, so to speak. Also, perhaps in this position, it actually made sense for me to play Queen B3. I was worried about Queen A6, Queen F1 counterplay, but uh, hoping at least to, or maybe Queen D3 or something, basically with the intention of keeping the bishops on the board. Yeah, I'm very, very unhappy about the past couple of moves here. They were not good. And now I think, like, I'm wondering, I have a sneaking suspicion that if I'm not careful here, I might actually be worse. That idea I do not enjoy one bit. I don't think I've done enough bad things in this game to be worse. Hmm. Yeah, not the best browser I ever played with the white pieces. I'll be honest with you guys. Still no moves here. Yeah, a5, we put the bishop on b3 and we play a kind of a slow technical game. Is g4 a move? It sort of is, but it doesn't really generate, much in a way. Like, I don't know if gh5 is even a threat. I think black can probably ignore it. Um, yeah, rook d6, we play rook b7. My biggest issue here is that, yes, it's awkward for black, but I also have no idea how I'm supposed to create any threats, which is why I think it's probably still a draw. Because, like, my king, if you imagine my king being teleported all the way over to b5, yes, then I will be better. But physics kind of gets in the way of that. Queen c4 is the right move here. And yeah, I think I'm kind of obliged to start looking for bailouts here. Like this, maybe. Just aiming to force some kind of an end game where I can just make a draw by force, because, like, genuinely, I think if you imagine this position in black landing the knight via c6 on the d4 square, I think it's very easy to understand why I'm concerned, and I don't really want to experiment here and pretend I can be better. I don't think I can. Rook a5. We can even go g5 here. It's a very typical. This is now a kind of a French structure where your typical French pawn breaks are very much in effect. G5, G3 doesn't really do very much right now. Maybe I don't need to. Maybe it's a little bit too fancy and kind of opens me up to some counterplay later on. Maybe just playing G6 is fine. I think we don't really need to do that. Rook f6. Yeah, I think I'm supposed to push f4. I think there is no way for me to make any progress. Rook f6 is clever because knight f5 is coming next move. That is very clever by my opponent. Yeah, this is, like, objectively, this has to be a draw. There's very, very little doubt that, uh, played properly, black holds, maybe even without too many issues. Knight f5. I kind of briefly considered going king f3, knight d4 check, king f4, knight takes b3, a takes b3, and I am, you know, quote unquote, I have like a moral advantage there because my rook is slightly more active, but I don't think I'm ever winning that position. So it's just not very much. King d2. King d2 also doesn't do anything at all. I mean, king f2. King d2 is not a legal move in this position, clearly. I don't know. It's at least it's a waiting move of some sort. d4. Now we go for, like, obviously we would like our knight to be on a more active square. There's also definitely some argument for playing rook c4. But knight b6, knight c4 is a little bit uh, too clear cut to not play. Knight d4. Yeah, my intention here was to play something like this and to see where my opponent is intending to go with it. But yeah, it seems like this should, like, normally, as I keep on saying, normally black of course holds this without too many issues. The mantle of calculation comes with a crown of teleportation. The crown of teleportation has to be a kind of a unique or perhaps even a legendary item, right? You only get that if you slay some end bosses. Yeah, and this is, I mean, this is very well played by my opponent, and I think I actually, sorry, I think I actually have to do this. I think there's absolutely no chance I'm better in this queen endgame if I just play it slowly. The queen on c4 is just way too active for me to, pretend I can play for a win. So I'm going to give the check on f4. I'm going to take on e5 twice, and we will get some kind of a weird position where there's a race going on. Bishop b2. I was planning to do this. Rook f5 I missed, but I don't know if it's such a great idea, honestly. Although I think I now realize what my opponent is intending here. I thought I will just play bishop c4 and it's nothing. But the rook c5 is, although rook c5 I can take on f7, I think. This is maybe not the best idea. Although I think bishop c4, black can obviously just play rook f6 back and not suffer unduly. Maybe I'm supposed to play bishop e4 here and then king e3. Maybe that gives me the best, tentative shot of being better. So my opponent picks up the pawn on g2 with check. I go king b3, and then she has the option of playing queen h3 check. King takes b4, queen takes h4. I take on e6 with check, though. And normally when you get a position like this where one side has an outside passer, let's say my opponent will have a passer on h5, normally, despite the fact that I have an extra pawn there, I can never really pretend I'm better, because she just starts pushing the h pawn down the board, and at some point I will have to start giving the perpetual. I think I'll just go a5. There's also some argument for something like 92, 94 here, but I think starting with a5 is unlikely to be a mistake. Rook d6. Yeah, it seems like I made some progress, but actually probably I made none whatsoever. I don't know why I thought this was good for me. Now knight e6, knight c5 is an actual threat. Yeah, really not surprising to me at all that I'm not making any headway whatsoever in this endgame, but I was hoping I could maybe, pressure my opponent a little bit, but seems like even that is too much to expect in this position. Ah, this I missed. This is, but I think this gives me hope actually, because after queen takes a2, I have queen b8 takes b4. It's probably still a draw, but it's going to become a more difficult draw for my opponent. I think the line I was describing was a better practical shot. Rook b5, and now, yeah, my intention was to kind of switch from trying to push the a pawn to going after the d4 pawn here with something like knight e3, knight f5, and so on. Yeah, mainly in this game, I'm mainly kind of posturing and uh, hoping that maybe the clock pressure gets to my opponent. That's probably the biggest hope I have here, that my opponent becomes unnerved by the ticking clock at some point, but it's not much of a hope, honestly. In this position, I think the trade-off, yeah, like this specific trade-off is going to be very, very good for us, obviously, because uh, yes, the a pawn was useful, but the d pawn is worth a lot more. Here I was, let me try and calculate. There was a, no, I can't, can I? I'm wondering if I can play king e4 in this position, basically. It probably doesn't make my chances smaller, so why not? King e4, knight c5, check, king d4. I don't think in rook d3 is strong though. Yeah, that's annoying. That is very annoying. Rook d3, king c4. Is it though? Like maybe we can still work with that. I don't want to blunder a rook though. Blundering a rook in this position will be suboptimal. But I don't think I'm blundering a rook, so let's go with it. Queen a7, I was planning to play king e2 here, and hoping I get to consolidate later. Bishop f3, and here we go, like knight f5, and then rook d2, and then knight takes d4, and the pawn on d4 falls, and from that moment on, the conversion should be quite natural. If I ended up actually blundering a rook here, it will be extremely funny. If I end up somehow losing this game, it will. I mean, I will deserve it, but it will also be hilariously funny. Okay, I completely missed the move queen g1 even existed. Luckily for me, I am still alive, but I am sort of starting to go completely blind here. Bishop takes d5. I'm not going to criticize that decision because the other position was also completely lost, but this is not going to save the game. At least, if I do my job properly, which is not a given, but queen d1. Yeah, I keep on missing kind of simple checks, but game somehow still continues, like very undeservedly. This is not yet an immediate draw. I mean, it is probably a draw. Something like queen c2 check, I go to g3, queen d3 check, I go to h2, and then queen e3 is probably a comfortable enough draw for my opponent. But somewhat shockingly, there is no immediate way to win back the pawn. I feel quite safe with this pre-move because it's only legal against d5, and I feel like I'm not going to be blundering a rook with this pre-move normally. Rook d7, yeah, that's correctly played. This actually requires some work, kind of regrettably, but we should be able to not screw up here. Yeah, in this endgame, I mean, it clearly remains a draw, but there are some subtleties about endgames like this, with the bishop generally being a lot stronger than the knight. Ah, king d6, king c7. I missed that. Damn. I wanted to go king c4, king b5, but then he could have gone king d6, king c7, and I cannot take on f7 because of the fork on d6. I did miss that. And that means that the knight, I was very much hoping I can force my opponent to defend with the knight on d6 and the king on d7. That was the setup where I thought I actually have a shot. But now that the knight will be on c5, I assume there is absolutely zero winning chances for me. d6, yeah, now we can go back to... We can also just go 94, 96, I think, which is going to stop all of my opponent's counterplay dead in its tracks. Queen h3. Let's not blunder a pawn here. I would very much like to be able not to blunder a pawn in this position. Can we manage that? I don't know. Yeah, this on the other hand is sort of specifically the position I was hoping to get. I still don't think it's anything much, but I can definitely be, it's possible to annoy black quite a bit in this setup. King d7, we go bishop c2, then we go bishop d3, and then we start looking for zugzwangs. And I can definitely imagine black losing this endgame, actually. I think, yeah, this is the best position I've had in ages and ages because suddenly all of my pawns are protected and my king will be active on e5. I think I'm favored to win this now. There must have been a draw earlier for Julia, but I think now it's sort of on me to once again make a mistake here. Also, because the agreement was sort of made way in advance, we could not really tinker with the time control. But when we're only down to 3 boards, I have a very clear advantage, obviously, because I think, as you can see on the clocks, even I'm sort of way ahead on every single board in terms of time, and I'm a lot more accustomed to playing from these situations. So I could go for some dirty flagging here. 98. Yeah, let's not blunder knight f6, knight g4 though. That is clever by my opponent. I didn't realize this move existed. We should not be allowing that. I think I'm supposed to actually play h3 here. I'm not happy about having to play h3. It's not a move I normally would be making in this position, but I really need to make sure that knight g4 check doesn't happen. A knight c7 check and then king e7 is also kind of a problem. Is there a way for me to deal with all of these issues somehow without giving up too much? That is a very, very smart move by my opponent. I completely missed it. I think I can even go forward, king e5, king d6 here. I think it's fine. Yeah, this is kind of difficult to dirty flag somebody on 30-second increment. Actually, yeah, you're right. 1, 2, 3. It's going to be problematic to. I think this pre-move is also quite safe because it's only going to be legal if Julia plays e5 discovered check. So I think I'm okay. Yeah, in this position, I have sort of achieved something because I think we can take. I've achieved something. Oh, it's not my move. Sorry. Like I can do this. Hang on, I need to think. I really don't like thinking. Bishop d3, knight d7, king d5, knight c5, bishop c2, king d7. We haven't actually gotten very far. We've gotten somewhere, though. And now we kind of run back, and we are now playing the same queen's endgame, but with 2 pawns up. King g1, we can attack this guy. If he goes d7, then we attack and pick up the other guys. So that's how we convert this here. Knight e8 is a curious choice. Yeah, but this is the issue here. I've made like for now maybe the most progress I could have made, but I am still not making nearly enough progress. And to sort of continue pushing, I feel like I have to start offering pawn trades. And pawn trades, let me just maybe finish the other two, and then we can play this one. Shouldn't really matter where I go in this position, honestly. Yeah, rook e7, we go knight f8, and they fall one by one. Yeah, I missed queen c7 check, actually, but it's not a huge deal because we can go king b3, queen c, king c2, and if queen takes e4, we trade queens with queen d3. Yeah, so about this position, I'm considering going g4. Like in general, g4, g5 gives me something, but it's probably just never going to be enough, honestly. And without it, I just don't. Hang on a second. It's my move here. Hang on a second. This is progress. This is actually a lot of progress. What was I talking about? Because king d7 obviously runs into bishop b5 check here. And that is a problem for black. Took me a while to realize that I've actually gotten one of the positions I was hoping for here. Queen b5. Yeah, how do we proceed from here? I mean, I can push e5, but I don't really want to. b4 is also not really part of my plans here. I guess e5 is the most logical. Hang on a second. How do I? Maybe I should have kept my king a lot more active. I don't know why I brought it all the way here. Yeah, and this is now very, very problematic for my opponent because the pawn on b6 is probably falling actually, and I think I probably won this one. Yeah, we can close this one. So we're down to 2. I think this is probably a useful move. I could just go b4 and then king c1, king b2, and so on, but I think playing queen e3 here and then just starting to push the e pawn cannot really be a huge mistake. Yeah, so bishop b5, and then we go king c7, we pick up the pawn on b6, we pick up the pawn on a5. If when I take on a5 with the king, my opponent actually manages to put his king on c5, this is still going to be not a very trivial conversion. But it's not going to be impossible either, I feel. Queen b1. Yeah, I missed queen b. I keep on missing these kind of simple-ish things. It's annoying. And thank you for the sub, TXMate39. We appreciate the support. Welcome to Chess 24. Whoa, actually, my opponent resigned here, which is a little bit too early, I feel. You could still try playing something like knight f6, king takes b6. Like, can I move pieces? I can't, yeah. Knight f6, king b6, king d6, king a5, king c5. But I think probably king a6, king b7, and then the a pawn runs wins. But we are now down to this one game against Julia, in which I wanted to play queen e5. And then finally, maybe I can start pushing my guys forward. Pretty sure there's never any perpetual with my king in the center like this, and me having, 2 pawns which serve as shields, and every single pawn of mine protected. Fairly certain there can never be a perpetual in a position like this. And now we can start pushing forward. It's sort of more annoying than I originally thought, although like I stand by my assessment, but it's definitely somewhat more annoying than I anticipated. Queen f5 would be a strong move, Aronian, if it was legal. Yeah, definitely well played by Julia. She had this game under control for the very, very large parts of it. Let's make it legal. Yeah, make counter check legal. Legalize counter check. I think I can just go b5. I don't really need to Actually, I can pick up the pawn on h5 and then continue from there, right? Like this also should not be a mistake. Just put it back. Now we have 3 extra pawns. I don't know about that statement, Polyhistor. And that actually concludes the Simul because, yeah, with 3 pawns up, we really aren't hard pressed to convert here. And yeah, as mentioned, with the queen on e5 and the active king and all kinds of pawns in the way, there's never going to be a perpetual here. So that concludes the show. I got destroyed, absolutely destroyed in one game by my opponent. That game is now gone, but it's well played to Sonia Josephine, who played well from start to finish. And honestly, uh, like if I won that game with white in a simul, I would feel, yeah, that's like a normal game in a simul where I'm just stronger than my opponent, and my opponent shows very limited understanding of the opening that he chose to play. So well played to her. But I did somehow cheese my way to winning every other game. So I guess we take this as an acceptable first outing. And thanks everyone for watching. I'm sure there will be more of these things in the future. Um, but for now, yeah. But for now, thanks for keeping me company in chat, and see you sometime.